So news broke a couple of days ago that Nissan is going to be withdrawing from its memorandum of understanding with Honda. This is, to be fair, not official yet. It probably will be next week. But according to Automotive News, the CEO and the CEO have spoken, and they've said this is what's going to be happening. And the problem here is that it appears to be sheer unadulterated hubris on the part of Nissan. It is, I believe, executives and members of the board of Nissan who believe that Nissan is still the company they were 30, 40-ish years ago. And I think we are about to see the downfall of one of Japan's giants. Welcome back to All Cars React, y'all. I am John. This is about 25% news and about 75% my opinion of it because I'm super frustrated. I like Nissan. I like Nissan back in the 80s. And, there was a time where they were second place to Toyota. They went toe-to-toe with Toyota. They produced some amazing, technologically innovative cars. Race cars, sports cars, they were awesome, and they fell on hard times. And the similarities between Nissan and what happened to Chrysler really jump out at me in a lot of ways. And so I think what we're seeing is Nissan's moment before Chrysler's Fiat Chrysler debacle. So let's get into it here a little bit. Nissan they were saved by joining up with Renault and became like this. And they made a lot of boring cars. A lot of boring cars that really they pushed by either price or financing. There's always been questions about their reliability, certain with their CVT transmissions from Jatco. And they, after being saved, were itching. They were bristling. They wanted to be independent again. And they promised everything would be sunshine and roses. And so they actually did get it. Several years ago, they got their official independence. They had control of their own destiny. Since then, since 2019, they've had 3 different turnaround plans. And I actually could go on about this for a long time, that they let some products lag way too long, like the Murano. They should be on another second, third generation there from where they've been, simply to stay competitive in that 2-row SUV market. It should be huge for them. They just ignored it. Now there's a new one out. It looks pretty good, but the point is, the previous generation just drug on for too long. Same thing with the Frontier. They let it drag on for too long, and then basically what they've given is a refreshed one on the same chassis with the same engine. They're giving up on the full-size trucks. Midsize SUVs. When was the last time you heard somebody talk about the Pathfinder in the same sentence as the Pilot, the Explorer, the Grand Highlander, the Traverse? It isn't happening. They've lagged further and further and further behind. So I did and that's not even getting into what the heck they're doing over at Infiniti, which includes canceling their best-selling vehicle without a replacement for it. I mean, they're building the Infiniti brand around the QX80 at this point. And most of Nissan is honestly built around 2 models, one of which is the Rogue. And it's just unsustainable. And so that last turnaround plan, believe it was May of 2024, they talked about increasing their worldwide sales by 1 million units up to about 4.4 million units. By the third quarter, they actually had a quarterly loss. Operating profit had dropped 85%. And they were talking about cutting 25% of their existing capacity. And so they found themselves in a pickle where they needed help. They needed another savior. And I did a previous video about this where I truly believe that the Japanese government was like, look, we don't want Nissan to go to a Chinese company, right? You and Honda need to start talking. And that's what happened. And they came up with this memorandum. And the idea was that in that memorandum, they would establish a holding company for both brands, for both companies. that the majority of the board of directors for that holding company would be appointed by Honda, and the board would choose who would lead the two companies. And part of this was all predicated on Nissan having a viable turnaround plan to get back to profitability. Now, they have been talking about releasing the status of where everything is in the middle of February. It appears it's going to be February 13th because both companies are going to be releasing their fourth quarter results. And Honda's been pushing, where's that turnaround plan? So the same executives and the same board that had three different turnaround plans got wrong. They had to back off and then plan on reducing their capacity by 25%. Suddenly can't come up with a turnaround plan fast enough. So Honda has proposed not only being in charge of the holding company, but assigning the management and making Nissan a subsidiary of Honda. And that's the major hangup right here. Nissan is not willing to accept that. So apparently the board was kind of on board, pun intended, with the holding company and having two companies under it. But once Honda said, we're going to make you a subsidiary and we're going to take over management, the board said, no, we're not going to do that. So right now, it's been reported by Automotive News that Nissan is backing out of the Memorandum of Understanding. It was originally reported by Nikkei over in Asia, and it's not official. To their credit, it's not official, and a Nissan spokesperson even had said, we're going to talk about it in the middle of February as we've already planned. But as of this morning, apparently, I believe it's the CEO of Nissan went to the CEO of Honda and said, hey, we're going to be backing out of it. Now, they already have an agreement from 2024, I believe it was, to work together on platforms and EVs and things like that. So there's still some technological savings here. And to be fair, Honda could initiate a hostile takeover. Nissan's stock price is dramatically undervalued. In fact, although they are within about 400,000 or 500,000 sales of Honda's, their Honda's valuation is 4 or 5 times, I think, of what Nissan's is. So Honda could initiate a hostile takeover here. I'm not sure they're willing to do that, but it is a possibility. But I want to go back to, I believe the whole issue here on Nissan's part is hubris. They believe in their history. They believe they are still the company that made great products, innovative products, and stood toe-to-toe with Toyota. Although they're about 1/4 of the size right now, I think, in terms of sales. In fact, they're half of Hyundai Kia. And so for them to be in this pickle where they couldn't work under Renault anymore, they wanted their independence, and now they're on their third turnaround plan with layoffs planned. And even there's an article on Automotive News that part of the problem has been the two companies were moving at different speeds. Honda wanted to move very, very quickly, and Nissan was kind of, dragging their way along, including this turnaround plan, including they're not making the hard decisions to cut factories. They are slowing factories down. They laid off like 500 people, I think, here in the US. That's it. So it feels a lot like, if you will, except they're not bankrupt, Chrysler. They want to be saved, but they still want to control their own destiny. And so where that's going to leave them is vulnerable to a company like Foxconn. They expressed an interest a year or two ago in buying shares in Nissan from Renault, and I believe they were rebuffed. Now, they already own the Japanese electronics manufacturer Sharp, and they've been playing around the margins of the automobile industry like a 50-50 percent ownership in ZF Axles, I believe, and they partnered with Stellantis for automobile semiconductors, if I remember, but they want to build cars. And so whether by hook or crook, I think Foxconn is going to come into play here. And apparently, it's been reported the board, at least some of the board, is open to starting to talk to Foxconn about all this. The end result is I believe it's going to fall out once again from Japanese control. And, well, what's the 10-year plan? Where's Nissan going to be in 10 years when they're already so far behind? They're third behind Toyota, and Honda's already bigger than them. There's some news out there that these two need to come together to get to the size that makes them compete in an ever larger world of consolidation. And you know what? I've thought that for 30 or 40 years about Honda, and they still continue to grow, and I believe in them. And my view in that previous video I did was that if Nissan executives control it, I'm done with Honda, because I don't trust them to make the best products. If Honda executives are in control, then I kind of believe where that company could go and how they could grow together. I don't see a lot of synergies. I see them competing against each other, although Nissan has some larger experience with rear-wheel drive trucks and in some cases, in some ways, in electric vehicles. But overall, I see them basically having two brands that compete with each other, largely analogous to Hyundai and Kia. But I still think it's better than Foxconn buying them. And, you know, will Foxconn succeed? I don't know. Possibly, if they get control, whether it's a hostile takeover or whether Nissan throws themselves at their feet, I don't know if they're successful. I wouldn't bet against them. But I think that Nissan that existed has been gone for a long time, and they're just kind of riding on their fumes now. Again, when you have people who are outside following the auto industry who know about big Ultima energy and know some of the jokes around Nissans, you've got an image problem. And that's where Nissan is right now. So apparently next week we will hear officially that they are not going to be merging. They are going to continue their technology sharing with each other, and that's going to open Nissan up to being taken over by somebody else and controlled by somebody else. And it all comes down to me. The end here is executives who remember the good old days of Nissan when they produced the Stanza, and a board of directors that believes they are still that behemoth that can stand with Toyota and be recognized and appreciated and loved. But that's not what they are today. They're the leftovers of a failed merger with Renault, and they've got a long way to go and no real plan to get there, and apparently can't even formulate the plan to get to profitability. Let me know your thoughts below, guys. Thanks for being